The MHA manga is ending in only 3 chapters, and a lot of people are mad about how the story is ending so far. The final chapters have given us time skips and resolutions for multiple important plot points, but with only 3 chapters left, there is still a ton of unresolved questions, and some fans are worried that the ending is too rushed and that it's going to ruin the whole story. The MHA fandom is going absolutely crazy right now, and this time I'm not just talking about the crazy shippers, so let's get into it. You guys know how this works. If you enjoy my MHA content and you want me to keep it going, leave a quick like and comment right now for that YouTube algorithm. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss my videos on the final MHA chapters. In the last chapter, which was like the 5th last chapter in the entire story, a lot of focus was placed on the Todoroki family. We found out that Dabi aka Toya is still alive, but just barely. He is basically a cyborg now, being kept alive by a futuristic medical machine, and we were led to believe that he was dying anyway, just slowly. An injured Endeavor told Toya that he is retiring from being a pro hero, and that in the end, Toya's flames were stronger than his own. It kind of felt like Enji wanted Toya to feel like he won, like he got his revenge on his father. After this, Pro Hero Endeavor is no more, and Toya's flame turned out to be stronger. It's like Enji wants Toya to feel that his goal of destroying Endeavor has been accomplished, and so he can now move on in peace. Enji also vowed to keep trying to atone for the sins of his past, starting with being there for Toya every day from now on, regardless of how many days Toya has left. Now, on the outside, Toya was acting like none of this is really fazing him, but we saw that on the inside, this conversation with his family was genuinely affecting him. When Shoto asked Toya what his favorite food was, and then Toya responded soba, Shoto said that soba was his favorite too. Upon hearing this, Toya started crying, and in his own mind, he actually said sorry to Shoto. Natsu also made it clear to Enji that he doesn't want anything to do with him, and that he doesn't even want Enji to meet his future wife. Enji simply responded by saying that he understands, and that he will continue to do his best to make up for what he's done, but he doesn't expect anyone to accept his apology. Enji believes that making amends, no matter how long it takes, is his new purpose in life, and that is why he survived the war in the first place. In the end, even Natsu has to admit that Enji's commitment to making things right is pretty badass. We also found out that Hawks is now the Hero Public Safety Commission president, Lady Nagant is trolling the taxpayers, Gentle and La Brava are free and happy together, and someone is about to visit an injured Spinner inside his hospital room. The latest chapter answered the question of who was visiting Spinner pretty quickly by confirming that it was in fact Deku who came to deliver Shigaraki's final message. In the beginning of the new chapter, we saw some clips from a TV program about the villain Shigaraki who nearly destroyed all of Japan. In the program, multiple people on the street are featured answering some questions about Shigaraki and about their perceptions about the recently defeated villain. One man says that Shigaraki was scary and that he's glad that he was killed in the end, which is a totally understandable opinion to hold when we consider all the terrible things that Shigaraki had done and how many people he had killed. We then see 2 women say that Shigaraki was a cruel murderer and that he even killed a friend of theirs. He also destroyed one of their homes. We see what appears to be the same old lady who refused to help young Tenko back in that flashback from chapter 237 when he was traumatized and walking the streets right after his quirk activated and destroyed his entire family. She thinks that maybe Shigaraki just couldn't stop doing terrible things, and the fact that Horikoshi included her here is a pretty important message that he's trying to send. This lady is just kind of taking it for granted that he was unable to stop himself, as if there was nothing that anyone could have done to change that. And yet, when she herself had a chance to help him, she didn't do anything. She just left it up to someone else to figure it out instead of her. I think that Hori is trying to tell us that just saying, oh, it can't be helped, it is what it is not enough. All of us as members of society should actively be striving to make our society a better place on a daily basis. If we refuse to act and we just leave everything up to someone else, then do we really have a right to complain that things didn't turn out differently? Then another man says that at first, Shigaraki had seemed just like a random villain, and that no one could have predicted that he would turn out to be such a destructive supervillain in the end. The program moves on to showcasing all the damage that still remains from the war, and talking about international efforts to recover all that can be recovered and rebuild everything that has to be rebuilt. Deku and Spinner have come face to face inside the hospital, and they are now sitting across from each other at a small table. The Toad Doctor dude says that Spinner's body couldn't handle all the different quirks that All For One had forced into him, and so he was actually beginning to turn into a Nomu. However, Thanks to the research that has already been conducted into the Nomus, and because Spinner's transformation was still in its early stages, the doctors were able to stop the process, so Spinner is now injured, but he has come to his senses again and he still remains human. Spinner asks Deku why he's here, and he even calls Deku a murderer. Presumably, he is accusing Deku of murdering Shigaraki, but that's not really what happened. And I mean, even if it did, Shigaraki was trying to destroy all of Japan and murder over 100 million people, so let's be real, he absolutely had it coming. And yet, Deku doesn't deny being a murderer. He explains that he is here because Shigaraki left a final message for Spinner. Spinner wonders if Shigaraki left messages for the other League of Villain members like Toga, Dabi, and Mr. Compress, but Deku explains that there is only one message, and it is for Spinner. As we know, Shigaraki asked Deku to tell Spinner that, even to the bitter end, Tomura Shigaraki kept fighting to destroy. Spinner is clearly affected by this, and he says that Tomura Shigaraki was his ray of hope. Tomura told Spinner that together they would destroy everything. And to Spinner in particular, this had a very specific meaning. Because he is a heteromorph, he was lonely and oppressed for his entire life. The Hero Society had rejected him completely, it had treated him unfairly, and it had made him into a shut-in and an outcast. And so when Tomura told Spinner that they could destroy everything, to Spinner that meant that they would destroy all the cruel and unjust people and institutions that made his life miserable since the day he was born. Tomura allowed Spinner to dream, to believe that even a guy like him could become someone, and through the League of Villains, Spinner was able to be part of something bigger than himself. For the first time in his life, he had the feeling of actually belonging somewhere. And in fact, in this chapter we learn that Tomura was basically Spinner's first friend in real life. Due to the constant discrimination that Spinner faced because of his appearance, before becoming a villain he had been a shut-in who just stayed inside and played games all day. He was initially able to bond with Tomura over their mutual love of video games, and to him Tomura Shigaraki was a hero, because Tomura really cared about the League, and he wanted all the outcasts who were hated by the world like the members of the League to finally have a place where they could be accepted and where they could belong. So we have confirmation that both Spinner and Tomura were sweaty gamers, and honestly that explains a lot. Now, as Deku and Spinner are having this conversation, Spinner is becoming increasingly agitated, especially since it seems like he can still hear the TV, and everyone on TV is still talking about how horrible Shigaraki was and how glad they were that he died. As Spinner becomes agitated, his body is morphing and growing, and eventually he becomes gigantic and grabs Deku with his hands, which are now nearly as big as Deku himself. The doctor tries to intervene, but Deku stops him. He doesn't seem to think that Spinner will actually hurt him, and he wants to have a one-on-one discussion with the villain without anyone else getting involved. Deku confirms to Spinner that his impression of Tomura was correct. Tomura did really care about the League, they really were in his heart, and he wanted to become a hero to them. Spinner then thinks back on the events of the last arc, and he realizes that he made a big mistake. He was too blinded by the spotlight that the League of Villains was getting, and especially by the fact that the other heteromorphs, aka mutants, who were rejected by society, were now looking to Spinner to be their new leader and their hero. If Spinner had been paying more attention to what was going on with Tomura and All For One, he would have realized that All For One wasn't trying to help Tomura, he was trying to destroy him and turn him into an empty vessel for himself. If Spinner had chosen to oppose All For One sooner, especially after seeing how Shigaraki's body was mutating, maybe he could have saved his hero, his friend. And that, of course, reminds us that the League of Villains and All For One were on the same side, but not really on the same side. All For One was using the League to do his bidding, and he was using Tomura in order to mold him into his vessel. But All For One didn't actually care about Tomura as a person, and he certainly didn't care at all about all the other members of the League. All For One used them, and they allowed themselves to be used. This realization is obviously upsetting for Spinner, and he's also upset about the fact that the heroes and the rest of the world will now just move on and go on with their lives. Now that Tomura is dead, they will forget him and the League, but Spinner doesn't want that to happen. He says that he will write a book about the symbol of fear called Tomura Shigaraki, and about how the League of Villains lived to destroy. I guess Spinner hopes that his book will counteract the messaging being promoted on TV about Shigaraki being a monster and how it was good that he was dead, but I mean, I can't really blame the people who are speaking out against the villains. Tomura really did do monstrous things. He destroyed entire cities, he murdered thousands of innocent people. I know that many in the fandom like him as a character, which is fine, but he definitely wasn't a good person, and he earned the hate that he and the League are now getting. I mean, again, I repeat, he literally wanted to destroy all of Japan, which would mean the deaths of over 100 million people. And as Spinner continues to talk about writing this book and spreading the gospel of Tomura Shigaraki to the world, he is probably expecting Deku to be upset about it. But instead, Deku advises Spinner to make his book into a comic or manga. Man, there we have it, confirmation that the real author of the MHA manga was Spinner all along. No wonder why Horikoshi always wears a mask in all his public appearances. Anyway, Deku promises to Spinner that he will never forget Tomura Shigaraki, and as Deku leaves Spinner's hospital room, the villain says he has a message too. Tell that octopus to do his best. By octopus, Spinner means Mezzo Shoji, who is a heteromorph but who chose a completely different path to Spinner and became a hero. The two of them had an epic showdown back when Spinner was trying to free Kurogiri from the hospital, and honestly, it would have probably hit a lot harder if Shoji was the one who came to talk to Spinner, not Deku, but it is what it is. Deku then travels to meet All Might and Tsukauchi. They want to talk about Kai Chisaki, aka Overhaul, who is currently still in prison. Chisaki was finally forced to confront the Yakuza boss, the man whom Chisaki sees as his father and refers to as Pops. Now, the boss was in a coma for a long time, and that coma was induced by Chisaki's own quirk, which then allowed Chisaki to take over the Yakuza. Because of this, Chisaki is surprised to see the boss is awake, but the boss explains that support items are getting better by the day, and so the doctors were able to wake him up. Now, even though Chisaki basically usurped the boss's power, he still loves and idolizes the older man, but the feeling is not mutual. The boss rightly chastises Chisaki for straying off the path of humanity, and he tells him that the organization is no more. The Yakuza is over. Chisaki tries to apologize for everything he's done with tears in his eyes, but the boss says that it's too late. Chisaki should be apologizing to Eri for the rest of his life for all the terrible things that he had done to her, all those cruel experiments he conducted on her for his own benefit. As we know, Eri is the boss's granddaughter, so we can imagine just how furious he was to find out what Chisaki had done after he finally woke up from the coma. The boss says that he's gonna stay right here alongside Chisaki, reminding him of what he's done and chewing him out about it until the day he dies. Deku, All Might, and Tsukauchi then continue their conversation, with Deku pushing the still injured All Might in a wheelchair. The men agree that it was better for them not to have Eri confront Chisaki and to have him be confronted by the boss instead. If they had gotten Eri involved, then she would have just been traumatized even more, but this way Chisaki has to live knowing that the man he idolizes the most is disgusted by him and that the organization he loved has fallen apart because of him. Deku laments the fact that the heroes can't seem to stop all these terrible things from happening and all these criminals from hurting innocent people. But he's told to brighten up his mood because the new first years are starting school today and they are eager to meet their new senpais. Back at the UA, Shoto and Bakugo are absolutely swarmed by first-year fangirls who are desperate to get their phone numbers and take photos with them. Even Deku and Minata are shocked by how crazed the first years seem to be. But to be fair, the Class 1A students are basically celebrities now after all that's happened and after the role they played in defeating the villains. So it's not really surprising that they developed a fan base among the new students. The chapter ends with the reminder that we only have 3 more chapters left until the conclusion of the entire story, and that is where the big controversy lies. Some people feel that there are way too many unresolved questions still remaining in the series, and having a whole chapter focused on Deku talking to Spinner and a little bit of Chisaki crying just doesn't cut it so late in the game. Like, what about Toga? Is she still alive or not? And either way, we need some kind of resolution. What about Deku and Ochako? Is their unresolved relationship going to go anywhere after all that buildup? What about Eri's quirk? Is it gonna be used to help heal anyone else, or maybe to give Deku his quirk back? We know that her quirk was built up as so dangerous that it could destroy all of humanity. So is this gonna be addressed ever again? What about that mysterious character from chapter 425? We still don't know who that is, and there's only 3 chapters left. What about Deku's dad? Is there a way to still save Toya, or is he gone for good? Seriously, we don't have like 10 chapters left, guys. We only have 3 more chapters, and a lot of people are worried that we just don't have enough time to resolve all of these unresolved questions to a satisfying degree. I can definitely see where this concern is coming from, and I am also a bit worried that we're not going to get a fully satisfying ending at this rate. Don't get me wrong, I do think Spinner deserves closure, I do think Shisaki deserved the fate that he got, and it's all good, I like that we got to see that stuff. But again, this chapter felt like the kind of chapter you put in like 7 or 8 chapters before the end, not 3 chapters before the end. What do you guys think? Can the last 3 chapters bring us a good, satisfying ending, or is the ending gonna be too rushed, and is it going to fall short of expectations? Let me know what you think about this controversy down in the comments below. If you're looking for an epic MHA video to watch next, check out this video where I ranked the strongest multiple quirk users in the entire series, link on screen and in the description. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it in the future, leave a quick like to let me know. And if you want to see my analysis of the final chapters of MHA, don't forget to subscribe right now and hit that notification bell so you don't miss it.